Jarvis on Skype from New Jersey. A man who's written for regular newspapers, but also you like to write on the internet as well. I've been reading Buzz Machine here. I'm just wondering whether the good old-fashioned press in this country and all this talk about it is actually going to trouble the rest of the world. Does it look to Britain for a free press?
Well, I find it very troubling that we're talking about a government legislation over the press. This was referred to as Lord Leveson's First Amendment. Well, the irony is that it would violate the First Amendment because the First Amendment says one shall not pass laws over the press. And the question, of course, today is, what's the press? I have a blog, I publish. Is this going to call for regulation of me? Is this going to call for regulation of people across borders? It's an absurd regime. The problem, of course, here is this was brought on by criminal activity, allegedly criminal activity, from the News Corp empire. But there are laws already to deal with those criminal acts, with hacking dead girls' phones and with bribing police, and people are being arrested for those things. There already are laws to do that. To use this hysteria to now justify regulation of the press, great irony that Murdoch himself, who hates regulators, brings regulators on, is, I think, a very dangerous thing for speech as a whole. Our First Amendment in the U.S. says that no law shall be passed regulating the press and thus speech. And I think that that's a very dangerous precedent to set in the U.K.
In a way, there is a feeling that perhaps this is also dealing with the old world media rather than the new world media. It's very much aimed at the press, newspapers, which are hardly thriving generally in this day and age, and hardly touches on the new media, the internet and so on.
Well, that's exactly what I fear, because once you've gotten this first step of saying, well, let's deal with newspapers, then the next step is to deal with their online sites. And the next step is to say, well, they have a blog at The Guardian or at The Sun. What about my blog? That's exactly where the danger is. And where's the line between press and mere speech? Where's the line between somebody publishing news and someone just using the internet to talk, which is what it really is? The internet's not a medium. So this makes it, Emily Bell, formerly of The Guardian, wrote in The Guardian today saying that this is irrelevant to the 21st century media, and I agree. But the problem is some may try to make it relevant to our speech online, and then it ends up in the same case as, pardon me for perhaps going overboard here, but Iran and China are also trying to control speech on the net in what people are trying to say to each other. This is a very, very dangerous process, but there's a reason that UK gave up licensing the press in 1695, because it was a terrible idea.
And the rest of the world has looked to Britain ever since for free speech, haven't they?
Well, yes and no. Britain also has the worst libel laws in the free world, I would say. And libel tourism makes us all liable for any problems of anybody who wants to sue us for what happens to be read in Britain. So, no, I think that I would recommend to you all. Lord Leveson again said that he wanted to enshrine, at long last, freedom of the press and the law. But to use a law rather than a principle to do that, and to use a law that brings these other cudgels to bear, I think is where the danger lies.
But Leveson makes the point that the only reason he's having to do this is because the media itself, the press and so on, haven't been good enough at self-regulating.
Well, this is the British reflex to regulate everything. I don't think everything needs to be regulated. Here in the U.S., we have free speech. And you know what? It works. So the idea that the government is going to be better at this, the government should be in a position to watch the watchdogs, I find very frightening. Let the speech expand as the internet now allows, and I don't think there's a need to regulate. You have laws. There were laws that allegedly were broken, terrible, horrible behavior on newspapers, especially the News of the World. Well, the paper is dead. People are being arrested. The system's working.
Jeff Jarvis, good to hear it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us from New Jersey.